Economic action, step number 4. Counter the brain drain with businesses that aggressively attract black talent from schools, the government, and corporate America. If the mind is a terrible thing to waste, then Black America must stop the brain drain of its best and most talented people out of our black communities. For centuries, black parents have worked hard and dreamed of sending their children off to get a good education so they could eventually get a good job in a white home, business, or community. Black parents have been no different from white parents who also worked and dreamed of sending their children off to get a good education so they could get a good job. The greatest difference between the parents is the way they perceive their children will put that good education to use. Whites encourage their children to look within their own communities for business solutions and opportunities. It is almost inconceivable to think of a Jew, Asian, or Hispanic telling their children to get a good education, then find a good job in a black owned business. Black people do not tell their children. Black people do not tell their children that either. It is very difficult to find whites, Asians, Jews, or Hispanics who have worked for blacks. These groups wisely teach their children to use their training and skills to take care of their own group first. Since approximately 90 to 95% of all whites and Asians work for their own people within their own communities, black people become the exception. Only 2% of all working black Americans work for their own people within their own communities. This is no direct line, or there is no direct line between a professionally trained black person and benefits benefits to the black community. There is no direct line between a professionally trained black person and benefits to the black community. The new industries and communities we build must be places that provide employment and ownership incentives for blacks who want to use their skills and expertise toward the Powernomics vision for the race. Our schools, churches, and organizations must join in the effort to instill value for creating employment and wealth building opportunities within our own communities to end or reverse the brain drain. Black organizations can help reduce the brain drain by fostering and promoting public policy incentives and practices that encourage and provide financial and tax incentives specifically to inner city black companies that employ blacks. 50 years ago, nearly 98% of all employed blacks worked in white homes, businesses, and communities. The story of black domestic workers illustrates how blacks have always used their intellectual resources for others. There is a parallel in business. Domestics arrived before sunup to start fires and warm the homes of white families so they'd wake and dress in comfort. So they'd wake and dress in comfort. Blacks then cooked breakfast, sent the kids off to school, washed, scrubbed, ironed, sewed, and cooked dinner for the white families. All right. After feeding the family, cleaning up the kitchen, and putting the children to bed, these black mothers would then return to their homes after dark. Did anyone ever wonder, in all those years, who was taking care of the black children? Who fed and watched black children while black mothers were taking care of white children? I would like to know who is taking care of the black community and black businesses today when nearly 98% of all employed blacks continue to work outside of their communities in white businesses or offices. To achieve the Powernomics vision, black businesses need black talent, and so does the entire black race. Economic action. Step 5, establish solid root businesses within black communities. Root businesses are those that are established based on competitive advantages within black communities. Besides offering consumer products and services, root businesses are critical because they stabilize the community by offering jobs and employment training and revenues for supportive businesses and charitable organizations. Their identification with and location in the community would give them a competitive advantage as black behavior becomes more self-directed. Many root businesses already exist within black communities, but few are black owned. They are usually owned by whites or Asians and, when sold, are sold to non-blacks. To develop black-owned root businesses, black communities should establish a system to buy out existing white and non-black owned businesses. Encouraging businesses to sink their roots deep in their own community is a very common practice in America. Whether it is Sears and Roebuck, Burger King, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or Jiffy Lube, business developers routinely construct and operate their first stores within their own communities. The same is true for ethnic immigrants. Asians and Hispanics open and operate businesses in their own enclaves first before venturing into another group's community. After establishing root businesses, ethnic businesses remain ethnic businesses. Asian restaurants and cleaners remain Asian. The Jewish deli remains Jewish. Arab carpet businesses remain identifiably Arab. Where are the root businesses that blacks established that they passed on from one generation to the next? On the other hand, Asians have even learned how to use government contracts to develop root businesses. Asians are automatically eligible for the Small Business Administration set aside program because of their race. According to the Wall Street Journal, in New York City, Asians share Asians Asians share of SBA contracts has soared from 3% to 64.1% within 10 years, while blacks get less than 18%. Though over 90% of the Asians have been in this country less than 30 years and have the highest median family income in America, they have devised methods to pass on their certification status to succeeding generations of Asians. While they are accomplishing these feats, black Americans, who the SBA program was initially designed to help, now get the smallest number of awards of any of the so called minorities, and they are forced to officially graduate out of the program by the end of 7 years. Since integration in the 1960s, since integration in the 1960s, most black entrepreneurs seek to economically pass by opening economically pass by opening their businesses either deep in or on the fringes of white communities to hide their blackness. Most black entrepreneurs seek to economically pass by opening their businesses either deep in or on the fringes of white communities to hide their blackness. Key personnel in these passing black businesses, managers, receptionists, and sales representatives, are often non-black. Key personnel in these passing black businesses, managers, receptionists, sales representatives, are often non-black. According to a researcher at the Minority Business Development Agency of the U.S. Department of Commerce, approximately 90% of the successful black businesses within the Washington, D.C. metropolitan area were located on the fringes of the black city or in surrounding white suburbs, or in those surrounding white suburbs as of 1996. 90%. Okay. Black businesses that economically pass are in double jeopardy. Not only must they hide their true identity, but they must also depend on white America for their resources and market opportunities because their roots are not with their own people in black communities. They are vulnerable to white boycotts. Throughout history, black businesses have often failed because they were boycotted by whites who resented blacks' success. Now that integration has failed, black Americans can begin to show a new attitude and less tolerance for this abuse. They should establish within their own communities an economic base from which to compete and survive before venturing into anyone else's community or country. Think for a moment and tell me what is wrong with this picture. When you go into hotels, stores, restaurants, or any other business in Asian, Hispanic, Arab, or even white communities, you can count on the management and the working staff to be Asian, Hispanic, Arab, or white, the same as the community itself. But in Asian, Hispanic, or white owned businesses in a black neighborhood, the staff will still be Arab, Asian, Hispanic, or white. Establishing root businesses means that the management and staff in businesses located in black communities should be predominantly black, regardless of who owns the business. 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 If that is not the case, blacks must insist on a change if they expect to have an alternative economy that they control. Economic action step number 6: construct vertical businesses and industries that control all processes from raw resources in markets within and without, and within and outside of black communities. Construct vertical businesses and industries that control all processes from raw resources in markets within and outside of black communities. It is physically impossible for blacks to compete in every kind of business in every community. We will have our greatest impact if we exercise vertical involvement primarily within those businesses in which we have some competitive advantage. Vertically integrated businesses translate into industries. We should seek out key industries to strive to create a monopoly. A monopoly, a monopoly through vertical integration locks out competition. Vertical businesses can control markets, resources, research, and other complementary activities. The competitive advantage remains whether the businesses are local or national. Black businesses must also be vertically organized in production and horizontal in marketing. Vertically organized in production, horizontal in marketing. Once a black business or industry has succeeded in building a vertical industry in one black community, it should then spread horizontally across the country into other black communities until it has control of all its home markets. This vertical movement, followed by horizontal penetration, allows blacks to establish closed loop production and marketing networks for the private use of black businesses. This happens in the mainstream business world every day. For instance, more than 40% of all the United States exports and Nearly 50% of its imports do not compete in the open market. Instead, they move through closed channels. Japan does the same thing. So, if closed loop production and market channels are good enough for the big boys, why shouldn't we have our channels too? The challenge to black people is to build and control their own community markets and the products that pass through them. This means blacks need a variety of business communities such as manufacturers, suppliers, distributors, technology, marketing, and retailers. These business communities can link and serve as conduits for moving products, capital, and supportive services. For example, if blacks built a leather factory in an enterprise and empowerment zone in Baltimore, Maryland, the factory and its supportive businesses could be vertically integrated to serve as a national empowerment model and cluster. Distribution centers for the factory products could be established across the country. Retail outlets could be set up in malls, airports, and downtown stores. Our hypothetical leather factory can engender at least three levels of businesses that individually and collectively get together with other black manufacturers, distributors, and retailers to improve their business operations. This national network of business communities can increase the competitiveness of blacks in business. For more information, see the National Reparations Plan schematic chart in Appendix B. Economic Action Plan, step number 7. Stop the capital drain out of black communities. In other words, buy black, but sell to anyone. Okay, Black America has a major problem. The flight of its disposable income into the pockets of racial, ethnic, and religious groups around the world. Black people have enriched every group except themselves. Without a sense of community and a vertical chain of obligation, and no guidelines for how they should spend their money, no product or business loyalty in the marketplace. Black consumers are easily persuaded to be penny wise and dollar foolish in their spending patterns. They shop for the best price when, for a few pennies more, they can maximize the benefits of their expenditures to include the black community and race. The few who are concerned about getting the best return on money spent or invested use too narrow a definition for measuring return. To achieve the Powernomics vision, return on investment should be measured in its broadest sense. in personal economic as well as group socio-economic terms. For every penny spent, the black consumer should know what benefits the group receives in political, social, educational, and economic terms. Not only does our money go into the pockets of competitors, it comes back and is used against us. Not only does our money go into the pockets of competitors, it comes back and is used against us. Black consumers ought to value reciprocity and examine what they receive for the dollars they spend outside their own community. Black Americans' spending patterns deprive them of their greatest potential for power, a flow of financial capital. The statistics we have used before paint the picture. We spend approximately 95% of our income outside of our communities. Only 2% remains in black hands inside of the black community. We typically take that 2% down to the local white bank and deposit it in a traditional savings account. It is then out of our control, and we generally cannot even leverage it into personal or business loans. Blacks often express bewilderment over how well whites live. They sometimes entertain out of town guests by taking them for rides through white communities to show off the expensive homes and wide array of retail businesses. The question is frequently asked, how can so many whites afford to live so well? The answer is easy. Besides having hundreds of times more wealth than blacks, they also have the advantage of living off of two incomes, 100% of their own money and 95% of black people's money. While whites enjoy the economic power of dual incomes, black Americans struggle to get by on the 2% of their disposable income, which is financially impossible to do without some form of government subsidies. While our spending pattern, while our spending patterns, while our spending patterns are inappropriate for the Powernomics vision, the spending patterns of whites and ethnic groups demonstrate that they value keeping their disposable incomes within their respective communities. When European immigrants started to arrive into this country following the Civil War, the majority white society ceased purchasing services and goods from black merchants and black communities. Previously, whites transacted whites whites transacted business with black barbers, blacksmiths, caterers, and laundries. They initiated conscious boycotts that, for the most part, remain in force until this day, until this present day. It would be a rare sight to see a white person drive to a black-owned business in a black community to purchase black manufactured products, while the purchase patterns of Asians, Arabs, and Hispanics indicate they too avoid black businesses. Blacks do not consciously boycott Asian, Arab, or Hispanic businesses. Our course of action is clear. We should always treat other people and other groups the way they treat us, not better and not worse. In chapter 3, we talked about reciprocity with businesses in building functional communities. It is also important in economic groups. If businesses systematically boycott black businesses, blacks should develop a systematic way to withhold support from them. If they refuse to hire black employers, black merchants should refuse to hire non-blacks. If they build and if they build and operate ethnic businesses in black neighborhoods, we should build and operate black businesses in their neighborhoods. Whatever we do must begin with discipline in our spending patterns. We should identify those companies with whom we spend a disproportionate amount of our money, then compare that figure with the amount of money they spend with our black businesses. This comparative research should be the basis for establishing equitable relationships between white businesses and black people. Business equality is achieved when the amount whites spend with us comes close to what we spend with them. When an equitable relationship cannot be established, blacks should invoke the new rule: never treat any group better than they treat you. Blacks should alter their spending patterns accordingly to avoid spending their money in any non-black owned business that does not treat us the way we treat them. The single act of 36 million blacks withholding patronage would probably garner more respect for the black race than all the marches, riots, and civil rights laws put together. Keeping black disposable income within black businesses and community would close the door to the capital drain. Mhm. Day 36. Economic action step number 8. Attract semi-finished products into black communities for value-added manufacturing, processing, and assembling. Attracting semi-finished products into black communities is a way to practice group economics. Aspiring entrepreneurs need to be mentally conditioned to scour every possible business and community for products that black businesses can adopt, modify, and duplicate. Hundreds of companies build their businesses based on research performed by others or by duplicating products first produced by others. Copyright and patent laws are important to respect and follow, but most commercial products move through a cycle of constant modification and reproduction. Black entrepreneurs can become paralyzed sitting and waiting for the ideal opportunity to invent the single most needed and revolutionary item on earth. It is not likely to happen. Post World War II, Japan is a good model of this technique. Although they received lots of financial assistance from the United States under the Point Four Plan, and it is easier to recover from a military loss than from centuries of economic exploitation. Japan did pull off an economic miracle within 20 years of World War II. With limited resources, wealth, and manpower, the Japanese traveled the world, examining the efforts and products of industries in other nations. They took their ideas back to Japan and learned how to replicate and improve on what they saw in competing nations. They constructed their wealth and industrial base on a and waste not and want not philosophy. They collected every scrap of material and recycled it into new products similar to those produced in other countries. The Japanese purchased products produced by their own industries first, regardless of the cost and quality, because they knew their purchases would give their country's industries a chance to grow and perfect other consumer products. Acting as a nation within a nation, Black America can use its limited resources to replicate products the very same way Japan did. We have to become more productive, and there are numerous good models in existence. But the Japanese economic development model is one of the best for Black America. As blacks began to sacrifice to purchase black produced products, it should be motivating to know that the measure of products in a people is not what they consume, but what they produce. As blacks began to sacrifice to purchase black produced products, it should be motivating to know that the measure of progress in a people is not what they consume, but what they produce. Tell you.